You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast on BQN. We're here to showcase the films you probably missed, but should definitely check out. From independent and obscure to art house and absurd, each episode will gather, perhaps cocktail in hand, to discuss it all. I'm your host, Laz Marquez, and with me today are Mark White, Matt Jennings, and special guest and executive producer for the pod, Amy Nelson. Hi, everybody.
Hey, guys. I'm Mark. I'm back. I have actually wine. I was going to do gin and tonic, but instead I'm drinking wine.
And hello, I'm Matt. I have yet again another wine cooler. This is Simply Spiked Peach. I found it at the local gas station.
Lovely.
Keep it classy.
Wow. And I'm Amy. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the pod. I'm very excited. My cocktail in hand is a little special concoction. It's got some peach Crown Royal with strawberry vodka, a little bit of elderflower with cranberry, fresh lime, and
oh my
lime
God, that
Perrier.
sounds
Beautiful.
amazing.
It's lovely and refreshing for a nice summer day.
Wow. I'm just
jealous.
drinking water. Well, we're super excited to have everybody on board. So what we want to do is we want to start, like we do with our episodes, with just going over some of the feedback that we've gotten since we launched the pod. So I'm going to take you through some of what people are saying about our first episode. So from Vera Bible, she says, "What an incredible episode. Thank you all for sharing your deeply personal stories. It isn't always easy to do. I had not heard of this movie before listening to the podcast, but I will be seeking it out." Thank you so much, Vera. From Ria Papa Giorgio, "Great preview, great music. Cinema Z sounds pretty awesome." And you sound pretty awesome too, Ria. Thank you. And then from Melissa Larson, she says, "Great job, guys. Love the pod and looking forward to more. You can show this to your corporate overlords for proof that people are listening."
That would be Amy. She's here. She hears it.
So, Melissa, we have let our corporate overlord know, and we highly appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm glad that we have listeners for our new show.
Incredible. So, today we will be covering one of my personal favorite films of all time, 2005's Shopgirl, directed by Anand Tucker and written by Steve Martin. The film stars Claire Danes, Steve Martin, and Jason Schwartzman. The story follows Mirabelle, a disenchanted salesgirl and aspiring artist who sells gloves and accessories at a department store. She has two men in her life, wealthy divorcee Ray Porter and struggling musician Jeremy. Mirabelle falls in love with the glamorous Ray, and her life takes a magical turn. But eventually she realizes that she must empower herself and make a choice between them both. So before we get into our initial thoughts, what I wanted to do is take some time from listeners of the pod. I love to bring in voices that are engaging with the pod and giving their perspectives on either films we've covered or films that we will be covering. So look out for more of that as we continue. So this is what I call one-sentence reviews from those listeners. So from Yez on Instagram at Paper Polish Hoarder, she gives the one-sentence review of an unconventional love story that sneaks up on you and makes you fall in love with it. Lean Isabel on social media, she says, "A minimalist love story that explores one's capacity for love with tones of humor and loneliness." And then Desi at The Shy Trekkie on social media says, "An incredibly moving novella filled with heart, subtle moments of sweetness, and ultimately a loving reminder about recognizing one's own worth." So with that, I'd love to open it up before I go on my rant to the rest of you and see what you thought about this film. Do you want to start, Mark?
Uh, do you want me to start? Okay, we'll see. So, I feel like the film feels very earnest, and I'm not sure that Anand Tucker was a good choice as the director. Uh, Conceptually, the idea of the film works for me. The cast is phenomenal. Having Steve Martin pull double duty as narrator and Ray, I actually don't think worked. I got creepy stalker vibes from Ray from the first moment he was on screen, and I couldn't really shake it. So having him narrate the whole thing as well made me as a viewer feel like I was in on the uncomfortable situation. And he was driving the car, and the doors and windows were locked, and I couldn't get out of the car. So that is how I felt initially my first viewing. I don't know, maybe because I'm viewing it with modern eyes. And it's not so much that he was older. It was the way he got her phone number and just sort of, he didn't know her story. And he's like, I'm just going to buy her presents. And it's like was walking into the store, saw her, and was like, I want to buy that. And he wasn't talking about the glove. And I have a lot of problems with that. So that was my initial reaction. Sorry. I know you love it. Sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. I think the great thing about this pod is we are able to express our different perspectives, and there's a lot to unpack there as we discuss the film in more depth.
So I will go next. So I was watching the movie, and there's like an awkwardness in the language and the delivery of the language, and I couldn't put my finger on whether or not that was the purpose of it, or if it was something that needed more rounds in the writer's room. What I will say is that there is payoff in the end with the why the story is being told. And I think as I was watching the movie, I kept trying to understand why. Why are we telling this story? What is the purpose? What is the purpose? Why is Ray here? Why is Jeremy here? Why is Mirabelle here? And so it doesn't really happen until the end that you quite understand exactly what's going on and how it all kind of ties together. I think it's just the journey and the execution of it. It maybe dragged a little bit, but at the same time, that kind of could have been maybe the purpose. So that way you kind of focus, and you're forced to focus on each of these characters and what's going on with them. Overall, I understand the journey, and I think the process was slow, but I think that maybe some of the choices were deliberate.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mark and Matt. I, too, was very curious, Laz, why you chose this. And you're saying that it's like one of your all-time favorite movies. I'm just like, big question mark above my head. It's a good movie, and I do remember seeing it before. And so when I watched it again, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this. And Matt, I'm right with you. It moved slow, but then at the end, and I really felt like even an hour after I watched it, I was still thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be something to this movie that I'm still thinking about the journey that each of them went on. So I think if you go into watching this movie with it's the journey, it's not the story. The story has been told 20 gazillion times. It's your, typical, who are you going to choose? But the journey that they go through, I think that's where the heart is. And the score. We must talk about the score, I'm sure later, but that was phenomenal. And it clued you in on what was going on in the story.
I love that score, by the way, and we'll definitely highlight that at some point, but I believe his name is Barrington Fulong. Beautiful score.
Okay.
And I love that it's brought in to really highlight, I think, Mirabelle's specific beats and moments. But kind of jumping off of what you're saying, Amy, I guess I'll go into why I love this film and why I chose it specifically. So we've covered two very diverse films already, with Everything Everywhere All at Once and Before Night Falls. For this one, I wanted to throw in something that would be a little bit more divisive for the sake of like having true conversation about something that could be like a personal taste film. That being said, it's interesting that each one of you touched upon certain aspects because this is a film that is also written by Steve Martin. It's based on a novella that he wrote. So there are moments in this film that I feel are like very much play out like a book or a stage play. So that's something that I want our listeners to be mindful of as well as we kind of break things down. But I remember seeing this
Hmm.
film for the first time in my early 20s, and I'm not like a rom-com guy. I don't like many like romantic things. I like my scary movies and my, sci-fi and superhero stuff and like things with a lot of like social commentary. So this was a movie that I was like, ugh, I'm gonna hate this. And I can't remember who had me watch it, but I felt like incredibly seen as a person after watching it because I had the same reaction you did, Amy, where it stuck with me after watching the film, and that's what kind of made it special. Because as a young gay man, dating was like always a huge nightmare for me. I was always looking like with big old romantic goggles on for like love and connection. And maybe it was like just the early, years of like the 90s gay scene and whatnot, but
Yeah.
and like living in New York, but that wasn't really the way things played out. I think people were exploring themselves more and really having fun with their, sexuality and being very sex positive.
Hmm.
Where I was like, where's love? I just want to have kids and get married and have this like
Yeah.
romantic idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember for like years I just wasn't meeting anyone who understood me or wanted to go
Hmm.
like deeper than just kind of like that surface level stuff and physical gratification. So when I saw this film, I immediately was like, oh my God, I'm Maribel Buttersfield, like to a T. Like I'm this, optimistic, sad, naive character who is displaced in a city where really my mind was like on art and finding connection and
Hmm.
just wanting somebody to highlight me, even in that opening narration where it's like all she wants is for like the universe to just bring her counterpart and highlight her as a result.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's because I have way too many feelings, but Claire Danes sold me on this movie and I adore it for those reasons. I
Hmm.
cried for like a whole hour after watching it the first time.
Yeah, I think her character, like she's very naive and like you, Laz, like has this idea of this is what I want,
Hmm.
but I don't know how to get it. So she's like reserved. She's conservative, yet she does this amazing art and creative. And like when she
Uh-huh.
disrobed and laid naked on that bed for Ray, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so out of character. But yet it is what
Hmm.
she wanted to do. And she owned it. I thought that was a great, empowering move for her and unexpected because she is the, stay between the lines type of character.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So there are a couple of things. I'll try to make it short. But Laws, in regards to where you were in your journey of being a gay man and wanting to find connection, find love, and relating to Maribel in that way, I totally understand that and and felt the same way. I think that Maribel has to have an end of innocence
Mm.
in order to make it to where she gets to at the end. And Amy, even her, disrobing and laying on the bed, I think that's one of those moments where there's this end to innocence. And I think we have another one, obviously, regarding how Ray treats her and how that I want to call it a situationship.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't quite think that's in my opinion.
yeah.
Um, I don't think that's a relationship. I think that's a situationship. He's saying to her, I think it's the morning after they first had sex, and he says to her, "Hey, I'm not looking for anything serious. I want to keep my options open." She takes it in, but she doesn't really register
Yep.
it. She still has those rose tinted glasses that she's seeing through. And her heart being broken, I think, is the necessary end to innocence so she can grow.
That scene, I think that that pivots her realization of what you're talking about is where Ray's talking to his therapist and she's talking to her friend. And they're two completely different stories. Oh, yeah. I told her that, there's nothing more. It's just when I'm here, I want to see her. And she's like, oh, he's going to cut back on traveling and stay here with me. And it's just like, oh my gosh, no. And the therapist is like, and you're sure she understands? Oh yeah, she understands. Cut to her telling her this, this fairy tale that she wants to have happen. And at that moment, that's where she decides to put her worth, because she didn't know her worth before then, right? Because she was just going along. And so it's like, it's just that tiny bit. I think that's where the film pivots and is like, okay, she starts being more artistic. She's painting or
the
charcoaling, whatever more. Yeah. And she's like improving herself, along with Ray, but he's not improving himself.
No, he's not.
So there's that disconnect, which is why they don't end up together. And there's a really funny
thing that you just brought up, Amy, when we see the contrast between Ray talking to his therapist and Maribel talking to her friend. And for whatever reason, I zeroed in on what Maribel was saying to her friend. And I was thinking, no, that's not what he said at all. Did I miss something in the movie? Let me rewind it. Hold on. Like, that's literally where my mind went. I was like, wait, how did I miss that?
Well, it's bonkers because, like, it's those nuances that I love about the film. Because, Matt, I think you mentioned it earlier on. Like, it's like if you're not paying attention to the nuances in this film, like, you can miss a lot. And I think that the parallel of them both having the conversations with people they know show how, like, they both had one conversation, but he took it to one extreme and she took it to another, which is why they never were able to align moving forward.
And they weren't really listening to each other, in my opinion. They weren't listening to each other.
Right.
So I think with that, we can start diving deeper into the film. We're going to start off with one of our director's cut segments where we take a line from the script and play it out ourselves.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
I kind of feel like, based on what we've heard, that Mark might want to play Jeremy. What do you think, Mark? You want to play Jeremy?
I love Jason Schwartzman. I don't know if I could possibly fill his shoes, but I will definitely, I'll do my best.
Do we want to go like super awesome and have Amy play Maribel?
Oh, shocker.
Action.
Are we going in?
Go in? Oh, no. I thought we'd just look at it.
So we would just sit here then?
Yeah, or walk around. This place is called City Walk. It got 8 out of 10 in my date book. It's called City Go See a Movie. Tickets are like $10, so.
Cut.
So I think that kind of encapsulates a bit of where Jeremy is when we first find him.
Oh, so awkward. So
awkward.
I was with Maribel and on this date, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this has got to be the worst date ever.
Uh-huh.
And there's something to this, Lars, that you had said regarding this being like a play. And there's something about this, I don't know, the language, the flatness of the language, but I think it's purposeful flatness. Reminds me of something like Waiting for Godot. That's all.
I'm curious again to get your guys' thoughts on the character played by Jason Schwartzman, and then I have a fun question for each of you to answer.
I think none of the characters, but especially him, he doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't have a clear direction, which is fine when you're young. You're trying to figure it out. He's doesn't seem to work or has a very...
like a stable job or anything.
Yeah, and his apartment is a mess. He's doing laundry at a laundromat. He doesn't have a conversation. Like, I mean, even in that, director's cut, it's like, yeah, we'll just walk around and, we're not going in. And then and like you said, Matt, it's flat, but I think it is on purpose because it is really highlighting his awkwardness, and his weirdness. He's weird to interact with. And you're like, where are we going? His brain thinks differently than I do. And so it's like every time he says something, I'm like, where did that come from?
And also just what you said about Jeremy you said not listening. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think so. Or interacting.
Yeah. It's a similar thing, but just in a different form with Ray.
It's like she's looking for connections, but like each one of those men are kind of talking to themselves.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Talking to what their needs are before hers. Because Jeremy for sure is like super, super awkward, but something I did pick up on with him at least was you would get like these weird glimpses that he's thinking about her. That he likes her but doesn't know how to express it. Like even when like they're at the city walk and he's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this new font. I call it Maribel. The L's go like this, and he loops his finger. So you could tell he's thinking about her even when she's not there, but he's not capable of being close in a weird way.
He can't articulate it.
Yeah.
And there, I will say, I think from an acting perspective, I think that maybe Jason made the choice of showing that awkwardness and that indecisiveness in his body, which I think was really good. Because to me, he's kind of a little twitchy. He doesn't quite know what his body's going to do. Sometimes there's a nervous shuffle. I thought that was a nice choice.
Yeah, and I think usually, when you go on a first date, like there's a clear plan. And so for Mirabelle, it's like, oh, I thought we were going to go to the city walk and go see a movie. Mm-hmm. Like that was in her head because she's a planner, right? And so to go there and to not do that, I mean, kudos to her for just going with the flow, but that would really throw me for a loop. And it's like, well, if there's not a clear plan and I can't understand him, like what he's saying or where he wants the discussion to go, what are we talking about? But his saving quality is that he's sincere.
Yeah.
That he's honest, and you get that it's like, he's working on, like you said, font. Like, how endearing is that? That's true. That's real. Yeah. But he can't express it and he can't turn it into a conversation.
Yeah. Like he's very like what you see is what you get kind of thing. Like it's all like word vomit and just like impulsiveness. So, but to your point, it's like, okay, like it's pretty clear, like that's who you are. Like there's no games involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amy, I think you're right. Kudos to Maribel for sticking with that and having the patience for something like that, because I know I would have had my friend call me and say, hey, just call me on the low and just say there's a family emergency. I'll meet you out back. Like I would be trying to find a way to dip out. So
yeah, it was just new for me seeing Jason Schwartzman play a character like this. I'm kind of used to seeing him more well put together and sophisticated, and so I actually didn't know he had the range to play a deadbeat loser. So this was new for me. I feel like the laundromat scene, I feel like Maribel really, like, you get to know her a little bit through that scene, because here's this guy that's clearly so far out of her league because she's gorgeous and talented artist, and I feel like, but she's also like really depressed, and so you can understand that in this scene, that she's fundamentally sad and depressed and lonely. And even if this guy isn't grade A material as it, dating wise, he's giving her attention. And if you've ever been lonely or depressed, I think something that I don't know, I could relate to is feeling a lack of self-worth or self-confidence, feeling gross when you look in the mirror, when other people might not see that. Other people might see you in a different way. But when you look in the mirror, you see somebody gross and unworthy of love. And so here's this guy at the laundromat showing her some attention, and she's like, oh, it's like this little nugget of positivity, and that was enough to get in her pants. Because I think also Maribel might be a little bit of a nymphomaniac. She might have like a sex addiction. That's how I saw her character, and I watched the movie a couple of times, but I saw it through that lens. But I think that probably comes from sex is the thing that makes her feel better when she's so sad. So she's on the antidepressants and stuff. But when she's having sex, she gets a rush of endorphins. She feels better. And so she'll take whatever she can get to just not feel like crap.
No, it's kind of interesting that you got that perspective from it. I was going to read it later, but this might help us kind of unpack that a little bit. There's points in this film where Maribel, while she's driving, is listening to like a radio personality. It's almost like a self-help radio station, I guess. I'm going to read that because I think it is intentionally included in the film to give you a frame of reference on why she perceives sex the way that she does. So I'm going to read that real quick, and then I think we can unpack that right after. But the female radio personality says, "A woman needs to be held, even, and science has shown this, if it's with someone she doesn't care about. Protective hormones are released, and the amount of hormones released depends on the degree to which she is held. The first and best is the complete surround. He wraps you in both arms, whispers how beautiful you are. Second best is the arm around. He is next to you, but with one arm around you. Third is he's just next to you with his elbow, but he rests his hands on your stomach and looks at you. Fourth is you snuggling up to him with your head on his chest while he looks away into space. But when the first best happens, you feel completely, wonderfully like a woman." And that to me is why she, because right before she decides to sleep with Jeremy, because that's her choice, not his. She calls him for the booty call.
Yeah, because I think she's a sex addict.
I thought
I didn't get that.
I thought there was I got the desperation for sure, because after that first date, I can't remember the specific breakdown of the scene, but Jeremy calls her, right?
That whole thing was awkward too. He called, but then the phone was
No,
off.
she called first and started screaming into the phone because he had knocked the phone off the hook.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he was about to call her. So it was like the two
And then
ships passing. Yeah.
They finally had a conversation, and then she asked him to come over, and I was like, no, what? No. But again, it's that desperation, it's that need, and you go after whatever. Sometimes you go after whatever is accessible.
You guys don't think that if there's a man in your bedroom that's saying, "I'm going to put a sandwich bag around my junk and have sex with you," and you're like, well, let's go see if you can find a condom. Like, you're still going to sleep with that guy, even if he recommended a sandwich bag? Like,
I mean, how cute is he? That is the question.
He's greasy. He hasn't showered in days. Probably smells like BO. Doesn't own any deodorant. We've all met this guy. Listen, and I don't want it to come across in this podcast, please, that I'm shaming anybody that has that type of addiction. I'm trying to align this character with how I see her.
Yeah.
And I think that all addictions are, it's sad because it's all consuming, and you have to try to help these people and not belittle their situation. And a lot of people write off sex addiction as though it's like, that's not a real addiction because it's fun. Everybody likes sex. I just don't want that to come across anyway.
Right.
That I'm, using that as some sort of punching down on it. No, I feel like that's an aspect of the character that I'm seeing.
Okay, I see her differently. I just see her. Am I really going to say this? I had an experience similar to this. Irish Spring guy is what I call him.
Okay, the tea.
Yes.
Spill the tea.
It was so terrible. And just a typical Claire, this Maribel date. It was awkward. Online, and I had like these, a free a gift card to a restaurant. So met him at the restaurant. We had dinner, And then he invited me back. And why did I go back? Because I was horny. I wanted sex. I'm not a sex addict. I just wanted it. And I thought, well, here's a guy. So yeah, I'm going to go. And then went back to his place. Oh, you guys, this is not my finest hour. No judging. Mattress on the floor. This type of guy. This is a Jeremy type of guy.
We love a good mattress on the floor. It's okay.
Oh. And his place smelled like Irish Spring soap. And it was so disgusting. And I just I didn't want to touch anything. And it was not pretty.
Are you guys still friends?
Oh, hell no. It was one and done. Never. No.
So that is very funny. I'll share a very quick, awkward story regarding, because we're talking about VO. It'll be very short. Long story short, I went to this gay bar and I was talking to this guy and we bar hopped to another place and we start dancing. And I'm sweating. And at one point, this man who was very attractive, he looked like a hot Stanley Tucci. Like, he was like really cute. Anyway, we're dancing. I'm sweating. And at one point, he takes his hand, dips it into my armpit, and he smells it with glee as we dance.
Oh.
And again, I'm not kink shaming. Look, if you like smells, you smell all you want to. But it was
We are not here to kink shame.
We are not here to kink shame, but it just caught me off guard. That was a man of smells. And then we hooked up like 2 more times after I came from the gym. But
you're such a giving lover.
It is a service, and I am here for the community.
I think it's a good point though, because like, gosh knows I have had moments where I'm like, you know what? I'm just desperate and lonely. I want, some attention and to feel some sort of connection with somebody. And it's like, you go home with the person, it's like a pigsty. They're not the person that you thought they were, even if they're slightly attractive, to begin with. And then you're like, why did I do this? Like, the personality's not there. Their value systems based on their like apartment is clearly not, close to mine. So I get it. I get that kind of yearning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've all been there. Hot Stanley Tucci.
And listen, Stanley Tucci is hot now. So so I guess with that, we have a lot of feelings about Jeremy. So I think we should move on to the saga of Mirabelle Buttersfield and Ray Porter. So let's start with a director's cut option. How about this, Matt? Do you want to be Mirabelle or Ray?
I can be Mirabelle.
Okay.
Action.
Ray, why don't you love me? Are you just biding your time?
I thought you understood.
So I can either hurt now or hurt later.
Cut.
So, Ray Porter, I feel like we're all going to have quite a bit to say about this fella. I kind of started my thoughts with the notion of like, is Ray the perfect guy for her at this point in time for her and her life? Or is he like possibly the most damaging thing to happen to her? Like, those things I think could be one and the same at points, in terms of like how you come out of it, but they're also equally, very extreme while you're in it and could have cause and effect moving forward. So I think that Mirabelle, she latched on to the idea of him more than anything else. I think because of his maturity, he was able to kind of play the part that she was trying to fill in, like we were saying before, of like that romance of like, he did all the right things. He like asked her out on, a date properly. He took her out to a restaurant. He bought her gifts. Like, those are things that I think when you're more mature, you're like, oh, no, like red flag, red flag, red flag. But I think for her at that moment, she saw it as adoration, whereas for him, it was just courting and like whatnot,
It was like it was on the list and it checked off the list.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if you're not careful in relationships, I mean, this is a situationship, but if the person is checking off the boxes on the list, that's kind of where you stop and you don't look at anything else. Because externally, oh, well, this is good, this is good. They did this, they did this, they did this. I think that Ray, uh, in regards to being the right person for her at this point in time, and whether or not he could have been the worst person for her to be with, I really think it's kind of interchangeable because I think, as you said, Laz, it's really all about how the individual in those situations recovers or doesn't recover. Like that's really up to you to take the bad experience and make something of it. And unfortunately, some people come along and they reinforce those fears that we had, and we don't do anything with it. I think Ray. At first, I wanted to say he was trash. I don't think that Ray is trash. I think that Ray is also at some point in his journey where maybe he's just not accessible in the ways that someone in a relationship would want that person to be. And maybe that is Ray's choice. Do we know how soon that divorce happened?
I don't know if they gave like
A
a proper
significant
number.
amount of time.
It was a significant amount of time. Okay, then he's just not doing the work. But I mean, that's to me, some people also just don't want to grow, or maybe they're too scared to. There's a whole bunch of reasons. But Ray, I think bottom line at the end of the day is not doing the work to progress. And maybe it works for him. I mean, obviously not, because we kind of see in the end that he has his regrets about letting Maribel go.
So for me, I found that again, I'll go back to Maribel. I really felt for her character as somebody that's, I've been through a lot of depression and anxiety myself, and Claire Danes, come on, she knocked it out of the park with really showing that humanity and that truth of somebody that is living day by day, just trying to find some semblance of joy because she wants to keep going, she wants to live, but she's not finding the joy in her life, right? So here comes Ray. Again, it's another individual that just, to her, is like this white knight, that just comes into her life and is showering her with gifts and making her feel, a certain way. And all she can think about, and they say it in there, is why me? Man, I can say I've had that feeling, I don't know, so many different times in my life, because it's hard for me to accept things when they're going good. That's why I've had a lot of relationships in my life with people that could have been destructive. Now, I've dated some real beautiful people that had beautiful souls, but I saw the best in them, and maybe they weren't always the best, right? And so they might not have treated me the way that I deserved to be treated. And so we have this situation now with Ray and Maribel, where she's seeing the very best in him, and he's just not showing that to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has this pretty woman vision. He's going to come. And it's very destructive for people to say, you need to come save me because no one saves anyone else. You only save yourself. And so, yeah, she's seen Ray as, he's got money, he's mature, we're going to have this wonderful life, and he gives me what he can, and that's enough for me because look at all these good things he has. And I've been there too. And you go along until something happens or until you realize, no, this isn't what I wanted. And it's okay to go along and like, yeah, I want this. I want this. Because she got so happy that she stopped taking her drugs, right? And so she truly was happy. She just didn't know that she needed more. And that development, so Ray is definitely needed in her life at this time because she got there. Because she realized, yep, this is not the relationship that I want. It was good, but it's not what I want now.
There have been so many times, kind of piggybacking off of what Mark was saying, in my life where I've dated people and I've fooled myself into staying with somebody because there was a security behind it. And because my insecurities weren't allowing me to break outside of my own box and realize I needed more, because it was like, well, can I do better? Or probably not. Like, am I worthy enough? This seems like perfectly fine. So you kind of make these things up for yourself with that kind of insecure heart. And then like years pass and you're like, wait, I should have never done this. I should have like come
Mm-hmm.
to a realization sooner, but sometimes you have to go through that journey.
You really do. And there's a very dangerous place that you can get to of just being, is content the right word to say in regards to
Complacent, right?
complacence?
Comfortable.
Yeah. With situations and mindsets like that, you can end up staying with someone for years just because it's, or in your mind, the safest place to be. And if you're not careful, it ends up going into other avenues of your life. You end up lashing out for reasons that you don't quite understand and can't quite put your finger on, but you have to realize that it's starting with you.
Again, I love how this film is able to show you the not so easy nuances about these different contrasting relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because, on one end, I've been in like that complacent, comfortable relationship, but then after growth, I find that I go and I swing to the complete opposite end where I'm like, I'm independent. I can't be with anybody unless they accept only me and me as who I am. And then it becomes like another blocker because then you're like full tilt crazy mode where you're like, nope, nobody will ever be able to understand me like me. And you're not making connections or you're not doing, give and take in a relationship.
My acting teacher used to say that sometimes in terms of like your physicality, we would deal with these physical exercises where we'd like open our bodies up really big, then we would go with our impulse, then we get really small, and then it would say sometimes you need to have a healthy contraction and go small because sometimes you just have to protect yourself. And at that point in your journey, maybe that's just where you are, and that's okay. I think rarely are you ever balanced.
Hmm. I always like to say, we're all work in progress, like for our entire life.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like nobody ever stops like growing and whatnot. And even I think Ray has like glimpses where you think he's gonna grow and he just stops. Like I think when Maribel has her depressive episode, you start to see that he cares enough to like reach out and take her to the doctor and do, certain things that are not just trivial,
Mm-hmm.
or just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm gonna buy you like a pretty dress that you can wear before we, get physical. It's like he's like, no, I'm gonna be over there, like we're gonna, get you some help. But then it's like immediately after, it's all out the window. It's like he is self-sabotaging himself and Maribel at the same time. I think this would be a good place to talk about the rebirth of Maribel and the rebirth of Jeremy, effectively. So for our director's cut option for this point in time, I will just go ahead and play Ray as the narrator.
Action.
As Ray Porter watches Maribel walk away, he feels a loss. How is it possible, he thinks, to miss a woman who he kept at a distance so that when she was gone, he would not miss her? Only then does he realize that wanting part of her and not all of her had hurt them both, and how he cannot justify his actions except that, well, it was life.
Cut.
That is such a beautiful sentiment. It's exactly what happens. And that narration totally draws back because I think it's saying, or it's around the same time where the movie ends with Jeremy and
Yes.
Maribel lying in bed with both his arms around her. And it just goes back to, what you read before of what is that true
Mm-hmm.
feeling of comfort and love and being protected. Those hormones are being released. And when you hear that and you see Ray's face as she's walking away and embraces Jeremy in that kiss, that it wasn't even a passionate, but it was a true kiss. And you see Ray look at that and you're like, dude, you could have had that, but you were keeping her at odds. And it's a fear I think we all have, it's that risk of what if I show her my real self and she leaves me, and Ray battles that his entire life and hasn't overcome that.
Nope.
And in this situation, we get to see Jeremy and Mirabel overcome it. And I think with Jeremy's story, like his band, the guitar or the singer, in the band was like, all right, you're going to get all these self-help relationship, CDs because we're going on tour. We've got all these hours. You're going to listen to this. So Jeremy had help in learning how to overcome his awkwardness and how to communicate effectively because he already knew he wanted to go all in.
Yeah.
He gave his heart. It just wasn't well given. He didn't know how to communicate. And she, in turn, learned through Ray how to give her whole heart because I don't think she knew how.
Agreed, yeah.
And so Ray was her help while the band member was Jeremy's help. And that's how they came together.
I think it's so interesting, the parallel of the first date between Mirabel and Jeremy, and then that second one where he's like all put together. He's like, yeah. I've been here before, and I sat right here, and I got my heart broken. He's like, so I'm gonna kiss you, and he's still him, but he's able to communicate, and he's able to show tenderness to her.
It's so adorable, and what I like is that even though he's made this journey, it could just be part of Jason's performance. He is clearly still not comfortable. He's still very much figuring it out, but you can see him trying and doing the work. And there is something attractive about someone that is trying. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that it wasn't just everything was tied up in a nice bow.
Yeah.
It was still messy, and I appreciated that.
What about you, Mark?
When it got to this point, I actually felt like Jeremy's character was more realistic. I really felt he was pretty unbelievable at the start of the film, but by the time we get to this point, I was like, oh, he could be somebody that I know. Like he made a lot more sense for me, so I liked his character better. But I couldn't bring myself to believe that he would ever end up with Claire Danes, no matter how much makeup he put on or how many nice suits. So yeah, I think.
Why is that, Mark?
I think that they would work really well as BFFs. Like when they show up at the art gallery, they were like the bestest of chums. And they were there to see other people and whatever, but they were hanging out. And I was like, yeah, like this makes sense to me. Like I get this. And I kind of wish that in the end of the movie, they would have ended up as good friends. And she would have ended up in a healthy relationship with somebody that wasn't still kind of a loser, but dressed up.
I could go along with that rewrite.
It's interesting because, I was not on board with Jeremy in the slightest. Even on multiple rewatches of this film, I find him so insufferable in the beginning that it's hard for me. But again, that scene where they're having the discussion outside her door, and he's like, "I'll protect you," and hugs her. Or even just the little micro things that somebody who actually cares about you does. Like when he's at the gallery, he's like, my girlfriend did those.
Oh my God, that got me.
And I sit there and I'm like, oh my God, I just want to be treated like that. So I believe Claire Danes and him being together. I don't think that they glam up Claire Danes in a way that she feels out of his league. I think that
really?
No.
I have to disagree with you on that.
Are you with me, Amy?
Yeah, she cleaned up.
AGT.
She was way more financially stable, and in part because of Ray. He paid off her student loans. Come on, that will do wonders for your pocketbook.
Yeah.
And she was selling more art and having self-confidence, and she was wearing nice dresses. And I think even she was Jeremy was like, you're tall. Oh, I'm wearing heels. Yeah, she's dressing nice. She definitely improved. And so did Jeremy. I'm not saying that, but I still felt like there was this gap between them where I could see, Mark, that they could end up being friends and have healthy relationships but still be friends. So I can go both ways on that.
Yeah,
I see that.
I can definitely see them. I could see them being friends as well, and I would have been fine if they ended up that way, because I think even then, even if she didn't end up with anyone, and the relationship that she found love in was this friendship.
Was herself, maybe?
I mean, yes, that as well. But if the friendship was an extension of, of this newfound love that she needs, that would have been great too, because friendships are intimate as well.
Given that, I think we can move on to what we call rewrites. So if there was something you could change about this film, what would it be and why?
This is easy.
Go for it, Mark.
Listen, I have been since I graduated high school and I started seeing Jason Schwartzman appear in movies. I thought, I used to look like him. I had a lot better hair, but I really liked him as an actor too. Like, he was in a lot of like the Wes Anderson projects and stuff, and I was really into that. And anyway, I always thought Jason Schwartzman was like cool. And it's not so much that in this movie he plays a believable loser, but the character wasn't written well. He played the crap out of this character. Jason Schwartzman gave it every ounce of his acting chops he could, but the character was not written well, and that's not his fault. So what I would change about him is I would rewrite the character, not entirely. He could still be kind of a little bit of a loser, but not be so stupid. So I would just up his intelligence level a little bit so he's closer matched with Maribel's, rather than have him be, somebody that didn't graduate like 5th grade.
So I'll just piggyback off of yours. My issue is also with Jeremy, but for the complete opposite reason. I actually did not like Jason Schwartzman's portrayal of Jeremy. I felt it was really over the top, almost like too quirky. So for me, it was less about the script and more about his performance that I didn't like.
No.
I didn't find him as believable.
Now we're really getting a divorce.
We are.
I liked Jason's performance. I think for me that we needed that element to help push the story along. I think that his story in particular gave us some levity to the overall arc of the story, because I think, to me, if Jason was a little too down to earth, I think that the movie would have dragged. I think that the narration took me out of the movie. You can, show versus tell, and I think that the images in the movie have said enough and do say enough. I mean, prime example is when Maribel is leaving Ray and running into Jeremy's arms, and not running, she's walking into them. But the way that it's framed is it's as if you see the back of Maribel's body, and you see Jeremy's arms like this. And to me, that says so much. So for me, I don't think the narration was necessary when you can do something like that.
So I liked the narration. So I'm combining everything. So go back to what Mark was saying about Ray being crazy stalker. And so it's, what's his name? Steve Martin. Okay. So I got a little whiplash of, is this movie Maribel's story, or is it Ray Porter's, or is it Steve Martin's story? Because with Steve Martin playing Ray and narrating, like, I really felt it was a Maribel story. But then that last scene with Steve Martin narrating and it ending on Ray's thought of, oh, I could have had her, I'm a fool. Then I'm like, oh, was this Ray's story? I just felt whiplash from that.
You're in the car with the stalker. Driving around the house. You can't get out of the car. I told you, Amy.
And then one other side thing that maybe it's because I don't have one, but when she's looking through the
Yeah.
You know, the binoculars,
Uh-huh.
and she comes across seeing Jeremy whacking off, and I'm just like, really? Did we have to see that? Really? I mean, I get it, but I'm like, he could have been like cooking and dropping something on the floor, or he could have been sitting there playing video games.
I could have stood to see more.
I just, is that a normal thing for guys to just sit and do that? I guess.
well,
Or
I mean-
stand, or lay back, or
Really?
I
you
mean,
know.
not like with the window open.
Oh, can I
This
tell a
is
story
new
real quick?
information.
I know we're
Yes.
pressed for time, but I have to tell a story. I got a knock on the door from a landlord when I lived in Seattle, and it was the strangest knock on the door. And he said, "Hey, have you noticed anything weird out your window?" And I said, "I haven't. No, I haven't noticed anything weird out my window." Why? He's like, "Oh, we've had some complaints about your neighbor across the way," and it was a U-shaped building, of course, so my apartment would look up the other side, right? And I said, "Oh, I hadn't noticed any. I don't exactly, stare into the windows of the other apartments. It's not really I'm not that creepy." But I didn't say that to him. But I'm like, no, I hadn't noticed anything. So anyway, he leaves, and then it just puts a thought in my head. Well, what is he talking about? And so I start actually like casually like looking over there now and again, and this guy, well, his kink was he would pull the chair up to the window, open the window, lay his legs out over the side of the building and
Action.
into the alleyway below the building.
Oh.
And yeah, and so he did that a few times, and also I saw him multiple occasions. He dropped his pants and then would bend over and show his
Ham sandwich.
Ew.
So anyway, the next time that my landlord came, knocked at my door, I was like, "Mark, hey, just checking in. Have you noticed anything with the across the hall? That next building. Have you noticed anything peculiar? Because we're still getting complaints." I definitely said, "No, sir, I haven't seen a thing."
That's a choice. That's a choice.
Wow.
I'm not here to kink shame.
No, we are not here to kink shame. It's just if you are going to do that, I don't know. Put a towel down in the alleyway.
He could have hit a stray cat.
You could have. That cat would have never seen again.
Oh, men.
Exactly.
Honestly, yeah.
What do you do with those things? My goodness.
As much as we can, Amy. As
This
much
is
as
why
we
it was
can.
really important, Amy, for me to have a female perspective for this episode. So thank
Yeah,
you.
it just wasn't relatable to me.
Oy vey. So on that, let's move into standouts for this film. I'll go first. Claire Danes is my MVP for this film. I've always gravitated towards her. I think she's a wonderful actress. I think she always really commits to the roles that she's always been in, including one of my favorites, one of her first roles in My So-Called Life, because I'm a 90s baby. And I don't know what it is about her, and I know everyone joked about it while she was on Homeland, but she rips your heart out when she cries like nobody's business. It is so real, like just that point where you're like truly crying and you're having like that weird like breathing issue where you're like it's like just chef's kiss to Claire Danes and everything she does.
For me, it's gonna be Jason. I just appreciated the awkwardness of that character from beginning to end. I think the character made a journey while still keeping that awkward quality. Again, showing that character has work to do, but is still doing that work. You can see the gears and all of the little mechanics inside.
For my standout, it's just something that I found quite funny. The blonde perfume lady.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, who, or she tracks
right.
down
Oh,
where the dress." And yeah. And she calls up in the dress department. So who bought this dress? And found out that it was Ray. And so then she sees that Claire was walking in with Jeremy, assumes that that's Ray, end up sleeping together, and Jeremy calls and Ray, yes. And Jeremy calls him and is like, hey, it's Jeremy. And she's like, who are you? From last night? Oh my gosh. That was so funny. But it really told that story of Mirabelle where it's like she is having it all and now others are recognizing that. You know, she's got the rich guy who's paying off her bills and buying her things.
When she
and
sees the dress.
This must be perfect. And it's all tied up in a nice bow, but what's inside wasn't real. And she, I think, exemplifies that because she herself is not real. And so it counterbalances what Claire is wanting.
I have to say I could really relate to Ray. No, I'm just kidding. No, I have to say that Claire Danes carried this film. I also just got to give her mad props. As cringy as I would say, like, especially the beginning of the movie was for me with Ray, with Jeremy, with everybody she was coming in contact with, I just was not into. I kept my eyes on her because she was worth it, and she took me along the journey. And had it not been for Claire Danes' performance, this would be a very different film.
Rock on. Okay, so let's move on to some trivia tidbits about this film. So number one is Steve Martin actually had Tom Hanks in mind to play Ray Porter. But as the film developed, he felt that he would be better suited to play the part since he was so familiar with the work. I think Tom Hanks could have been cool.
No, Tom Hanks would not been good choice.
No?
Steve Martin, yeah. Tom Hanks isn't your sophisticated rich man look. He doesn't give that vibe.
No, agreed.
He's too folksy. He's too everyday man.
That's fair. That's fair. On the flip side, Jimmy Fallon was cast as Jeremy before dropping out before the film began.
Now that I could see.
I could have seen that too. I wonder what choices he would have made. I could see
it.
Yeah.
Now, Claire Danes took off her clothes, remember, when she was laying on that bed, and it left her uneasy. But a friend told her, it's good you're doing it at 25. When you're 80 or 50, you'll look back and think, I was pretty firm. So there's that. It was uncomfortable, she says, but I think that it was relevant and useful. She continues, also, it's erotic. There's no reason to pussyfoot around that. I thought it was vital, so I stripped. Well done, Claire Danes. And I felt that it leaned into her artistic creativity. I felt it was very her.
Yeah.
It didn't feel gratuitous.
I loved this next bit of trivia. During her 2001 arrest for shoplifting, Winona Ryder told a security guard at the Saks Fifth Avenue department store in Beverly Hills that her stealing was merely part of her preparation for a role in this film.
Oh, God. I can't. According to Martin's 2007 memoir, Born Standing Up, there are many parallels to his own life. Early in his career, he lost a girlfriend to an older, suave gentleman resembling Ray Porter. Real-life Mason Williams. Williams had a house that matches the description of Ray Porter's. It overlooked Los Angeles from roughly the same vantage point, and the descriptions of the two houses are the same.
And then finally, Mirabelle is partly based on artist Allison Hollingsworth, who was a consultant to the movie and had a relationship with Martin in the 1990s. Photographs and drawings attributed to Mirabelle in the movie are by Hollingsworth.
Wow.
That's meta.
It's very meta.
That's cool.
And he's putting all of his tea out there.
Well, even like the last name, Hollingsworth, because what's Mirabelle's last name? Yeah, like it's got the S in that middle. Yeah.
So, final thoughts. I think for this particular episode, I'm gonna take one of Jeremy's little tidbits from the film when he orders a mojito at one of the gallery openings. He takes a sip and he calls it a noisy mojito. So we'll give out those instead of stars. I give this film, it'll be easy and quick, 5 out of 5 noisy mojitos.
I think focusing on the message of the film, I feel like the message of this film is that real growth as a person happens when you focus on yourself and your dreams instead of focusing on finding happiness with somebody else. And so I like that that was the message of the story. I would say I did watch it a couple of times, and I feel like I liked it better the second time than the first time. And so it probably got bumped up a point from my first viewing, but it's still going to get 3 noisy mojitos out of 5 from moi. And I will sip it with my eyes closed. And, well, I like the color.
I think that the story is necessary. I know I say that about every movie that we've watched so far, but this is also a very necessary story regarding self-love, and I think regarding how dangerous it can be when you're trying to find that love externally and when you're not really, doing some extreme vetting of who you decide to let in on an intimate level. For me, I would give this movie 3 out of 5 noisy mojitos, just because, again, I think some of the execution was a little awkward for me in terms of how the story was told.
Okay. One reason why I like Star Trek is because it's, TNG, Next Generation.
I thought we were going to make it an
I have
episode
to bring in Star Trek.
without mentioning Star Trek.
I know. It's been a whole hour and I haven't talked Trek. So why I like TNG, as most people know, is because it's this utopia. You get this good feeling about it. And the movie does that here. And I feel because it's this utopia of self-improvement. And we get to see Jeremy and Mirabel improve. And they actually learn what they want. I think Jeremy always knew what he wanted. He just didn't know how to get there. With Ray and Mirabel, they didn't know what they want. They thought they wanted each other, but they weren't being honest with themselves. And it's Mirabel who really does self-discovery and realizes what she wants. And so for that, it's like an optimistic view. And so I'm going to give it a half star more because of that optimistic view. And it will be a 3.5, 3.5 mojitos for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for entertaining this little film titled Shopgirl.
It led to amazing discussion. I'm already loving the discussion way more than the movie. But thanks to the movie for giving us this.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's what I love about film. And like the films that I gravitate towards are the ones that you can have conversation about far after you've seen it. So I can give reservations to a lot of it because it's by no means a perfect film, but it does bring up a lot to think about. Matt, do you want to take us through what we're going to be talking about next week?
Do I? Next episode, Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is a 1997 American crime film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, based on Elmore Leonard's 1992 novel Rum Punch. The film pays homage to 1970s blaxploitation films, particularly Coffee and Foxy Brown, both of which also starred Greer. It is the only feature-length film that Tarantino has adapted from another work.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue the discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts at CinemaZPod and let us know if you'd like to recommend a film. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcasts.
So, Mark, where can people find you when you're not stalking people at your local Saks Fifth Avenue?
So it was just that one guy, and I only walked around the aisle twice. That's it. That's not stalking. Anyway, when I'm not doing that, people can find me on my other podcast, All Good Things, with Miss Amy Nelson. They can also find me in the BQN Collective Facebook group. You have to become a patron of the network on Patreon. I host the show It's Green, and you can find me on Twitter at MarkWhite207. And Matt, where can people find you when you're not sketching nudes of yourself?
Well, if you want to see the real thing before the sketch, just go on Grindr. No, I'm joking. I'm not on Grindr anymore. You can find me on Instagram at 1701BLERD. And Amy, where can people find you when you are not doing hot yoga with Beverly Crusher and Deanna Troy?
Oh, you must have seen the shirt I was wearing. Well, when I'm not doing that, you can find me here on the network where I am co-hosting, yes, All Good Things with Mark. I also co-host Galaxy Class and Union Federation. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place, BQN Collective, right there on Facebook. And Laz, where can people find you when you are at the City Walk and just watching people go to movies?
You forgot that I'm also working on a font. It's about you,
Oh,
Amy.
yes.
The M's go like this. So you can find me at Laz Marquez on Twitter and Instagram, and you can check out my work within the space of entertainment, such as movie posters, at www.lazmarquez.com.
Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and written review. With our show being so new, we really need you to do that, and it helps others to find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN. This way you won't miss any of our fine shows like All Good Things, Galaxy Class, History with the Szilagys, Infinite Diversity, Union Federation, What's the Tea, Bev, Truxpert's Quiz, The Captain's Couch, and Bargain Bin Gamer.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producer, Amy Nelson. Special thanks to Laz Marquez for our artwork each and every week. Opening and closing music for this podcast is titled Dancing Dead and was provided by Ketsa from the Free Music Archive, providing royalty-free music for content creators.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages. So again, thank you all for listening. I'm gonna go and cuddle with myself tonight.
We hope you'll tune in next time.
I'm gonna go ahead and do some charcoal painting of myself nude.
Great joy and gratitude.
Of course.
It wouldn't be a closing without it. Well, you can find me. Do I not get to not do anything when I'm not?
Oh, muffins.
Gosh.
I had one job.
I'm just a guest. I guess I don't get the full treatment.